Yep.
Are we there? What's up, everybody?
Hey,
I am Chicago, and to my underneath is Disco.
hey everybody. Yeah, I'm the bottom half. I prefer. I like the up and down. It's a good vibe. We're going vertical, which I think is kind of a cool thing to do. And we're doing another live episode right now. And it's just a fun way to do it. It kind of gets you kind of excited to just go and flow. So I'm excited to get into it. As always, there's a lot to touch on. So looking forward to a great show.
Yeah, me too. And I said Chicago. I'm Blue Toshi now. What do I know? So enjoy the intro, and we'll get started. There's a lot going on this week in the macro and the ordinals and the Bitcoin space. It's always fun and never a dull moment. So stay tuned and have fun.
Lens. We're lifelong
I'm
friends.
gonna do that again.
Welcome to Decentral Lens, where lifelong friends, Blue Toshi and Disco, navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With nuance as our North Star, our goal is to empower listeners with the insights to learn and to prosper.
All right. A proper intro was done. So, again, I'm Blue Toshi. Below me is Disco. And, we talk macro, we talk cryptocurrencies, we talk decentralization, we talk ordinals, we talk NFTs, whatever is kind of in the ordinal degenerate and the degenerate mind share of this fun crypto space that we all engage in every week. This one has been no exception. It's been a busy week. It's been a crazy week. I don't know, Disco. Where do we even
Well,
start?
well, I think it's kind of crazy. And I was thinking about this, like it's cool that this is, kind of captured and that we can go back, years from now and look at this, but it's going to be a little bit interesting that we can really time capsule the last couple of weeks, because every single time, at least as long as I can remember, like, oh my God, I couldn't believe how many things went down in this last week. And the amount of times we've talked about like sniffing all-time highs and, Bitcoin running and hitting new kind of, just completely new levels and just madness to a degree. And it's always like, but it's still going up, when we go back to it. So the fundamental thesis that, everyone's been involved with for the past 6-8 months, once we heard the ETF could become a reality, we're watching it in real time happen. And it really is changing just, kind of the entire understanding of the asset class, the acceptance of it. So it's a monumental shift in terms of just the financial markets, especially in America. And every week it doesn't fail to give us new things to take a look at and to understand how it's going around. So I think it'll be fun to kind of check this out in a time capsule format. I know that we can go back to like our youth and the old time capsules in the backyard and what we would put in it, but now we're looking at more of a digital version of that, and it'll be, I think it's kind of cool that we're capturing it in real time.
Yeah, I had a fifth grade time capsule. I think that's when we both did ours, and we buried them. I
Yes.
buried it in my backyard, and I think we were supposed to get them out when we graduated high school. And I still have mine. I don't know if you do.
Do you?
I'd have to pull it out, but I know my favorite. Yeah, I have like a plastic bin of like my childhood stuff and pictures and all that stuff, photo albums back when they had photo albums, and I have that sheet of paper, and I even remember the cylinder because I made it like red, white, and blue. I kind of colored it, and it was like that paper cylinder.
Yes.
And my favorite TV show was The A-Team. My favorite food was pizza, and there's one other data point. I think my favorite color was red. There's only like 5 things. I'll now that you brought it up, I'll dig it up because
Yeah.
because you're right. Like this show is a time capsule, and you know it's I don't even know where to go. Like we are live right now, and today is Wednesday, March 6th. We had, I guess, an all-time high yesterday. It might have clipped that 39. I'm sorry, 69 and
Yeah.
change thousand US dollars to one Bitcoin, and then it quickly fell off. Just
Yeah.
absolutely nuts. And we're not a price. We're not fixated on price here, but we're fixated on the culture. And it the in 2020, was it 2021? I don't even know the year where it went up the last time. It literally went up there. You couldn't have sold at that 69 price if you tried it. It vaporized the second it was there. And this one, I guess was no different, but that one was thin with retail investors and just people on Main Street coming in and FOMOing in. This one has slow lumbering institutional money behind it. Like this one to me, every time it dips, like you're the smart one in the room. Like every time it dips now, you're like, I need couch change. I need to buy more, because it just seems like, again, in a time capsule, let's see, but this seems like the most obvious bet that there is.
Yeah, just as an example, this isn't something that we talked about a lot before the show, but it just kind of came across the wire, and I think it's indicative of where things are at. As of this morning, apparently, the Arizona State Senate is considering a proposal to encourage Arizona State retirement systems and the public safety personal retirement systems to include the Bitcoin ETFs in their funds. So we are just getting started, not to use a cliche, but when you start seeing states go through their legislature to approve allocation of this asset, like that's bullish.
Yeah, that's super bullish. And Arizona's obviously, a pretty densely populated state, at least around Phoenix and in that area. So that's huge. And, more will come in companies and, international, like the wall of money that seems to not have arrived yet is super big. Whereas in the last one in 21, whatever year it was super thin. So it's hard not to put all your cash right now in Bitcoin. We'll see how that ages, but it just seems like a no-brainer to me.
Well, I hadn't, like in the past 2 weeks is the first time that I started using an ETF, because I was only doing, straight, purchasing the asset on its own, right, and keeping it as I'm supposed to. And it's so easy. Like I'm starting to really understand just how easy it is to just select, market buy, go, and you have it. And it's not even slowed down by like a mutual fund where it has to settle by the end of the day. Like you can buy in market, and I can see how how everybody is getting onboarded to it, because it's very easy to utilize.
Yeah. For those who are just listening in, we're not just about ETFs, but that momentum for pushing the price of Bitcoin higher is so strong. And this wall of money is just so big. That's where we start. Obviously, not your keys, not your crypto. If you have stuff outside of retirement accounts, get a ledger, a Trezor, just get a cold card wallet and store your assets on your own chain, because it's the most empowering thing ever. But yeah, the wall is just here. So what happened yesterday? So we hit 69 and then it did a dip, and you've got a little theory.
Well, first of all, just to get the kind of lay the groundwork,
yeah,
it hit the all-time high, and then it tumbled 7%, like almost immediately. There was like $1 billion in liquidations, and it dropped to as low as 60,000, 60,800. So, you get up there, you're ready to throw the parade and throw the rally and go and be like, okay, there's no stopping us. And then you're like, wait, what happened? Did it even happen? Because it was so quick, and it went down and it switched so quickly. From my perspective, what I'm trying to, put on a little sleuth hat at some point and try to get into this and understand a little bit more of where the breadcrumbs are. But from Disco's perspective, as a Coinbase user for my central exchange, where I like to purchase and run or sell or do whatever I need to do, the last 3 times that Bitcoin has hovered around the all-time high, or there's been an opportunity for it to get to the all-time high, mysteriously on the Coinbase platform, there has been warnings on top, like we are not displaying balances properly. And I've had 0 balances multiple times. 2 out of the 3 times where I logged in to either buy, sell, or see what was going on with the pricing. And it essentially says that I don't have any funds to access or anything I can do with it. Now, I understand that historically people look at that as, get used to it, buddy. That's, a sign of a bull market. And that just means there's a ton of demand and transactions, and the platform's not able to handle it. So technically people kind of brush you off to say, oh, that's a good sign, that's a good signal. However, I'm getting a little conspiratorial in wondering why, once there's these big high volume days and we're ready to kind of get into completely unprecedented new territory in terms of price action, Coinbase kind of turns off the faucet, and in my mind kind of gives you that cold shower to kind of slow down the party vibes to see where it doesn't have its chance to really get to where it could have gone. So obviously Coinbase is a big United States based exchange. Obviously, they're dealing with the regulations and everything, but I would have thought over the past X amount of years, and with their fact that they're custodians of so many of the ETFs, that they wouldn't be caught flat-footed on high volume days with Bitcoin approaching or passing all-time highs. So I don't really know how that's all going to net out in terms of if anyone's going to really figure out if there's any linkage or if it's strictly a technical failure. But it just seems a little odd that once the train starts rolling and, you're looking at passing 70, and usually you would think like once it hits an all-time high that maybe it just goes, there's least resistance. But as we've seen in the last, 3 different efforts, Coinbase has kind of slowed down the rally quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to share this chart while you were talking about that. So it's interesting. We always look at how many coins are actually on the exchange. And if this doesn't tell you a story, 27,548 Bitcoin have left Coinbase in the last 7 days. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, almost 13,000 left. Just to put it in perspective, in the last week, that 27,000 flat would be about $1.7 billion. Look at Binance. They lost almost 3x that. So, call it $4 billion. Bitfinex is obviously way less. A couple of them gained, but just look at the big players and how much they've lost. The amount of Bitcoin that's left the exchanges has gone down 0.5% to only 9% on the exchanges. The squeeze we're talking about is happening. It's happening slower than I thought. A big whale apparently yesterday too. From 2010, I guess he had, was it 1,000 Bitcoin or was it way more than that? They dumped money. They were miners for when Bitcoin was pennies back in 2010, and they decided to dump right at that market high. So people think it might have been that. Maybe, like Disco said, it was Coinbase like going down a third time and people couldn't buy in. I think Coinbase may have had less to do with it because that feels like the aftermarket stuff where you need to replenish your coffers. But Coinbase going down 3 times just... it definitely leaves a sour taste in your mouth. And like I said, I bought Coinbase stock the day it debuted and it was overpriced, and all the executives and all the people who work there dumped on us poor retail holders, and it's still down like 40% from all-time highs. So I held it, and it's not going anywhere. Maybe it'll break it one day, but like there's no, I don't dislike Coinbase because they've done so much politically in DC, and I think Brian Armstrong's I think he is a stand-up guy, but it makes you wonder, like, is there someone trying one last effort? Is there someone trying to like disrupt Bitcoin just going through the moon, or is Coinbase like literally inept, not being able to handle the flows? Or do they simply like, is this number that I'm showing right here, this whatever they have left, 359,000 Bitcoin left, is that number total BS, and they're like trying to figure out where these Bitcoin cover, like at some point, and that's why it's showing you a zero balance for 3 days straight every time we're reaching all new highs, and they can't handle it.
And there's also what I don't think people factored in, myself included, with the approval was how much had to be kind of cleaned up and washed from bankruptcies and things from that perspective that were, years in the past. Right. So I know that with, Genesis has to dump, a bunch to make some of the Gemini people whole. And you're talking about, like 1.2 to 1.7. Right. So it just seems like there's a lot of kind of cleanup from the party before, kind of the dirty bull market, when you kind of look back at what happened before with how it all kind of came down. And there just seems to be more cleanups in different aisles that seem to happen that are still kind of dragging it down. Yet, as I say, dragging it down, as I look right now, it's right about 67,000. So for anything to be like, oh, it's not at its exact all-time high, dude, give it a couple days, give it some time to settle. The trends are there. The inflows, as we can talk about, are just absurd. So I don't know, not financial advice by any means, but I don't think there's a lot of other things that have the inertia and the upward motion and potential that we're seeing with this stuff
Well,
right
yeah,
now.
and look at this. Like I think you nailed it, Disco. Whereas in the past, like it was thin, everybody FOMO because they thought, when things go up, you think they're going to go up forever. Your brain just hijacks you, and that's what this show tries to
Yeah.
protect people against. But look at BlackRock's IBIT Bitcoin ETF flows yesterday. It was 788 million. So you don't have to be able to read this chart, but just know for our listeners, the amount of volume since it opened like in mid-January, what are we, like 30 days of trading, the bars on these charts are just going up and up, and they're not going up by 10% a day. They're going up like double. I mean, it's just crazy. The fact that they almost did $1 billion in inflows one day, one of the 11 ETFs. I mean, if that's not bullish, like, and in the state of Arizona, like you said, we led with that, but now just using that as icing on this cake and is bullet point number one, like, that's the first announcement we've heard. We know that all the rails and all the wiring and all the local monetary advisors, financial advisors, like they haven't even, like the savvy ones in the hedge funds who can be more nimble and quick are probably nibbling away or wailing away. But so much of Main Street as it trickles to the actual economy hasn't even happened yet. So I don't think we're going to eat these words if we're calling this the time capsule episode, but I don't see how you can't just remain insanely bullish.
And it leads to kind of a weird feeling that I think both of us have talked about over the past couple of weeks, where you almost feel bad for people that aren't in the loop and haven't been following it and maybe got washed out in the last run, and have kind of a bad taste in their mouth, or they feel like they lost the chance to get involved and, like the train already left the station and they don't necessarily know what to do. But I'd love to figure out a way to kind of make people feel more comfortable with, looking at this. But again, I also understand that it's not my role or responsibility to evangelize, getting into the space and everything. But it's just kind of a dichotomy that you feel where you're like, dude, I don't understand. Like, I want everyone I know to be able to get involved in this, but you don't know if you want to make that bridge and have those conversations because you don't really want to be tied to it and make them get out of their comfort zone. But when you just look at the numbers and you do deep dives into this, it becomes clear as day to me. And then as you see those bars and you see those charts and you see number go up, like, I don't really see anything that's going to stop it.
No, it's all bullish all the time. So with the ETFs, again, we always start at the top of the waterfall and then we work our way down. So we know the ETF inflows are huge. We know Arizona came in. We know Coinbase is failing again. So it's a head scratcher, but is it related? We don't know. And then, of course, let's finish the section, Disco, just by saying, Microstrategy, just like ho-hum another day. They want to raise another umpteen $1 million. And so, they just keep doubling down, but they're now buying Bitcoin. They're issuing more stock, or now they're going to issue basically, like, in layman's terms, like a dividend. They're going to start paying like a dividend because they're so bullish that the price of Bitcoin will go up. So, like, as a company, instead of actually doing work, the work is buying Bitcoin and holding it and watching it go up and watching the value of your company go up. It's hats off to him. Like, it got stressful for a while. I'm sure, it was getting low in the high teens, like only 6 months ago or whatever. I'm sure behind closed doors, under the facade, he was sweating it, but he looks like a superhero now, and he's not slowing down his buying. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and it's an interesting data point. It's just that MicroStrategy's stock has outperformed Bitcoin so far this year, going up 94.7% as opposed to 58.2 for Bitcoin. So I know it's not the most complex strategy, and it's basically a strategy of conviction, I suppose, is the easiest way to say it. And God bless that conviction and seeing that pay off. And, let's see what they continue to do. And, there's always kind of the scuttlebutt or the thinking of, what does Saylor really think of ordinals? Is he going to come around? Is he going to sport a PFP of a node monk or something? So it's kind of fun to think of it that way. But at the end of the day, they're laser focused on this. They're seeing the great results from it. And, I just say kudos to the conviction for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And what else is there to say? So yeah, on Ethereum side, there's, it hit new all-time highs at $3,800 plus dollars.
Not all-time high necessarily, but it's hit 3,800 for the first time since the end of 21. So it's
right.
getting up there. I think the all-time high was just north of 4,000 in that area. So I think
it's actually more like 4,800. I don't know if it was up there.
Yeah,
it was 44, 48. Yeah, it wasn't low forces. I remember it went up because, I just did a little quick analysis, just looking, when Bored Apes and Azuki were just popping, was Ethereum cheaper or more expensive? And Ethereum was going up, it kind of peaked, and then when it deflated, kind of like we saw with the weird flash crash yesterday, like node monks were just running to 1 Bitcoin. Hardo, all the everything was up. Like if you're not making money right now, you're like trading too much and trying too hard. Like pretty much the demand for everything went up. But as soon as that little bubble popped yesterday, for whatever reason, on Bitcoin going from 69 back down to the little flash crash to below 60, and now it's hovering back up at 67, like a lot of those things deflated with it. But they're already they're not picking up momentum as fast as Bitcoin's going up, but they are already, that confidence comes back. And that just psychologically, that tells you how much FOMO and FUD control our monkey brains, and how, that's probably why being in some investment groups, like, they do better than others, because it's probably like there's almost like a practiced discipline of like, don't get over your skis, don't buy all the hype that you're reading, because just know, like, Node Monks is running crazy. It's a great collection. I own one, but there's a lot of timeline stuff, and a lot of it is frenzy from the holders. A lot of it's Bored Apes coming over, kind of like FOMOing over, kind of bummed that Bored Apes is kind of falling. My theory again is Bored Apes, like, if you have too much utility, at some point you run out of story runway and you're trying to fabricate story. And if you have no utility, that's baked in. So you're baked in a base utility like the CryptoPunks. There is no utility. It's the safest bet to me. I know I preach that over and over in this show, but that's why ordinals, I think, is kind of eating Ethereum's lunch right now, because the no utility and really the FOMO. I think people are coming over because they're afraid not to be a winner in a certain collection. So it's a lot of food for thought.
I think you're exactly right. And I think it ties to status and culture, right? So it's the people that gravitated towards kind of the buzzy PFPs and projects in the last run, those pretty much ended up on some of the higher profile Ethereum collections. And they had a swag during the time, and it was like, they had kind of this, little riz, a little swag, whatever you want to say. And now when the, ODM or, the crypto DM, just the mind share shifts, and you start having your timeline populated with so many new PFPs, you're sitting there like, dude, what am I missing? What am I doing? And you start questioning, your identity. And, if you want to align with the PFP for your identity, then you're going to want to be with the ones that are kind of have the mind share at the time, the ODM mind share. And obviously we're looking at the Magic Eden, and Node Monks definitely has it. There's so many little like puppet derivatives popping up now too. So you're starting to see just all these different collections come in. And I wonder if community is the utility really for this, and identity is the utility moving forward, as opposed to waiting for these big kind of brand build outs and partnerships and associations.
Yeah, I hope Ordinals stays cleaner than that, and Ordinals stays very non-utility. But I mean, everywhere you hear people like with quote unquote insider knowledge. Like I was listening to a show yesterday and they were talking about the quantum cats. They were talking about all this stuff and they're like, you know, institutional folks, like you guys have no idea how big it is. And I will say, like, look at the shrooms. Those are selling for like 4 Bitcoin now. I think some big
Wow.
money, you know, those on the ordinal side, the alien monks, what was it? 6 sold for like, I mean, a lot of money. I don't have it in front of me, but the minimum was like 6 Bitcoin. The top one I think was, I know Brissy's went for the hoodie, Alien went for 17 Bitcoin. So that total sale was at least
Wow.
50, 60, 70 Bitcoin. It was a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, and who knows if that's just a whale or institutional money, but just know, like, I repriced everything to be higher. Like if you have old ordinals and stuff, you got one shot to sell it, because once it's sold, it's sold. And is this the Pico top before Bitcoin goes to 500,000 and you just simply can't price those that way anymore? Or because Bitcoin goes up past 100,000, can these be priced higher? We'll see. This is kind of uncharted territory, but as Disco said, don't FOMO into stuff. Like, there's a lot of good stuff on here, but just look at the node monks rise. Like, there was a lot of crypto punks and there was a lot of apes, and a lot of them were kind of saying the same thing, and they're using the same language. And that happens a lot on a timeline, to echo stuff because you're excited, so you use the same language. But it also can mean that, you know, people are being paid to shill that over. And I think, no, it's, maybe that's not a great example because that one's taking on a life of its own. But just know, like, there are all sorts of influencers that are very good at pulling our strings, and you got to do what's right for you and not go over your skis. And if you want to get into the space, get something because you like it, and try and zig when people zag. Like, jumping in when things are burning super hot. Like, yeah, sometimes, like CryptoPunks, like when they just ran, you're always afraid it's going to make that ultimate 10, 20, 50x run. But a lot of times they don't. And especially with the smaller collections that are new, there's always a blow off top, and then it has to kind of reconsolidate. It happens over and over. The only time I didn't see it was the early Azuki, maybe the early Bored Apes, the CryptoPunks, but most of them eventually come back down to reality. So just stay within your limits.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point to think about, where some of the influence that you're seeing or that you hear, or the things that you're exposed to, there's coordination behind a lot of it, and just kind of be aware of that. I know I found myself, I was actually up in the mountains, getting away and touching grass in the form of snow. And it was a tremendous time. And before I started kind of stepping away and putting my phone down and getting into that, I was like monkey brained out that I had to buy every single thing on the top 10 in Magic Eden. And then I was like, but does it speak to me? And I kind of went back to that litmus test of like, does it really resonate with me? Is this something that, you know, after, you know, I put it out on the timeline and get people to, oh, do we follow each other? And you get kind of that buzz, like at the, you know, after that cycle, when I sit down and look at it, I'm going to be like, dude, that thing's awesome. I'm so into it. And, you know, I did a smaller purchase yesterday, and I had that kind of test this morning. I was like, dude, that thing's awesome. Like, I'd like more of those. So
while you're talking, what's it called again?
It's the Tokyo. Let me pull it up over here. It's like an ordinal Tokyo. The cool thing is it's a photographer who basically took these different shots of Tokyo, and then he put them into the Bitcoin orange and white. So I just think like that stuff's dope, and things can speak to you. And as you say, you know, there's going to be a cooling off period, and then he can swoop in and kind of retest if it's something that still speaks to you at that time. But sometimes some of the smaller things without the buzz at the time can be just as fulfilling, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And just remember, like, the most liquid you can be is within actually the underlying. So Bitcoin or Ethereum, in this case, Bitcoin. And if you feel like you missed out on something, just know that the price of Bitcoin right now, like with all the institutional money, they're not looking, most of these guys are 99.999% of these in the pension funds aren't looking at ordinals. That's like a fun digital vapor pastime. The price of Bitcoin itself could far outpace even these ordinals. So whenever you get FOMO brain, just take a gut check. And if you really want something, like, yeah, get it, but just be prepared. Like before I hit the buy button, I'm like, if this goes to zero, like, am I going to be able to look at that thing and not just be like, what were you thinking? And now usually the case is yes. Sometimes there's some no's in there, but I also won't buy 5 of something and then hopes of loading it up for it to 20x and then sell it. Like, some people will do that, and they might have the influence machines behind them, but
Right.
I don't have that influence machine behind me. So I bet on things I like, and bet on things that are not in the limelight right now that I think might be undervalued. And the more you're in a space and the more you enjoy it, I think the better you can do there. You're not going to make crazy FU profits, but you're going to do okay for sure.
Well, I think the coolest kind of representation of that, really, from, watching your path over the past couple of years, but specifically, and everybody in ordinals right now, like, they're getting rewarded for being attracted to the launch. And it wasn't like, that wasn't all over the timelines. That wasn't like this huge thing. It was kind of like some people who were really into it figured out, like, dude, this is pretty cool. And I remember it was like a light bulb moment when we were at the Vegas, at the Azuki event. And it was like, you're like, dude, I can't really explain this, but like, ordinals can do this, but then there's also this, and there's other layers. And I was like, dude, I got to try to figure it out. But all those folks that were in the first wave are now getting rewarded. And I think that's a pretty cool kind of representation of just following what's interesting to you and, not worrying about it in the short term. You guys weren't, when you're doing everything off the spreadsheets and stuff back in a year ago or whatever, you weren't just looking at, oh, the number's going to go up, this is a strategic play. You're just enamored with kind of the newness and the opportunity. And I think that's a really cool kind of origin story, so to speak, for ordinals overall.
Yeah, I got a lot of great deals then, but I also FOMO'd in then, and in the long run, it may pay off, it may not. I think I'm at even or maybe slightly above, but all it takes is for one mega whale to want, an ordinal punk or something. But I don't want to part with it right now, and it's definitely been a fun ride. But again, I think this space too, like, we're all up right now. And, Bitcoin reached an all-time high. It's already, it retraced quite a bit. It's already almost back there, but there's so much drama going on in all of these collector spaces, and they don't realize that in like NFT collecting and ordinals collecting, there's such bigger battles to fight, like on Capitol Hill, just to make sure we have freedom of expression, to make sure that we can cryptographically hold our own private keys, which helps for probably future voting, future transparency of the government. And when I see all this infighting, it's absolutely absurd. And ordinals was pretty immune to that, I would say, for the first year. But now that all the ETH whales are coming in, like, we're just seeing these old feuds from these OGs that I know fight. There's people I know out there in the space who have went from being more fun and playful and talking about ideas to really getting controlling and trying to, like, I don't know, like, control the ordinals narrative or what it means. And it's like, we're collecting digital, secured private key digital vapor. So for me, I'm always gonna have fun, take the high road. And, I wish everyone who wants to stew in their own drama, I wish you the best, and I hope you find what you're looking for. But, I guess, Disco, what I'm telling you is I want no part in that anymore. And, I'm going to try and walk a simpler path with you, just observing the space and, trying to make connections in the space that seem authentic, because, I've been in Azuki before, and there's some people there I just absolutely love. I think the direction Azuki went in was terrible, and I think they blew it, and now they have to hit like a grand slam, bottom of the 9th inning, and they're down 3 and their pitcher's up and they can't sub them out because there's no one left. Like, good luck with that. I think the odds are against them because the degenerate mind share of this space moves so quickly. And not only is it not even on Azuki, it's not really on ETH right now. on ETH side, it's on all the meme coins and stuff, and on the ordinals Bitcoin side, it's ordinals and it's the runes drop. So I think they're in trouble. But even in the ordinal space, like there's so many cool people I met along the way. But my dad always told me, like, there's certain people that just talk about people, and that's like kind of your lowest frequency. Then there's people who talk about like things and events and games and stuff like that, and that's kind of the next level. And then the third level, and the one I prefer to be on and above, is people who like to chew on and talk about ideas and potential and possibility, and don't really shut people out for having different opinions than them. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. So you know who you are, but I wish you the best, and I'm just going to keep walking.
Yeah, I think I mean, there's a lot there, but what's disheartening is when you see a collection come out, right? And then it develops like a strong community. You know what I mean? So, we've been through a few of those. I jumped into the nuclear nerds with you, and like those guys were really tight about what they're doing, and same with Azuki. And it's just kind of a bummer when the team goes for a dilution grab or makes a misstep from a strategy perspective. And then you have all these folks that really bought in and were really, galvanized by this sense of, hey, we're going to really make something happen here. And then when they kind of do a top-down mistake that you kind of see, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you just kind of stopped everything that was going in the right way.
Yeah.
Like, that's super unfortunate. And there's just so many up stories right now, right? You know what you were saying? Like, it'd be hard not to have your things increase in value right now. It's like, it's time to kind of focus on the greater picture of, like, this is a movement that's gaining traction. And I think our bigger concerns really are, and it's probably something that we'll get into in some deep dive formats moving forward, is what are the dangers of this success? So I always go back to, like, indie bands or whatever, and they have a cool lifestyle and they have cool credibility, and then they do the deal with Geffen and they have to, produce these hits or do whatever it is. Like Billy Corgan got pushed with Virgin, to do certain things. And it's like, what are you getting out of that? And how can you maintain, what's important? And when we look at the BlackRockification of Bitcoin and the TradFiification of it, like, number go up and everyone's kind of excited, but are we getting a little bit blinded on what the net outcome will be at the end of this? So everyone technically who holds some Bitcoin is going to be pumped if it goes to, X, Y, or Z, but is it really going to be the vision of what kind of inspired everybody to go down the rabbit holes and be so excited? And I think we're at the precipice of really having to have that kind of fundamental conversation in the next couple of months and years.
Yeah. And I think people are already, I know in Peter McCormack's show, they're starting to have those conversations, like, are Bitcoin ETFs actually good for Bitcoin? And, the jury's out. You want, like, I always say, Bitcoin doesn't care about what you think. Right. Bitcoin doesn't care about what the regulators think. The regulators can only regulate we citizens from access. They can just make it more difficult for us to access it. But this Bitcoin, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. Yeah, I don't know how else to phrase it, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's complete Teflon, right? And it's completely just going to do what it's programmed to do, and that's that. I have a question that I've been just kind of thinking about and wanted to bring up and just have a quick little circle around on it. But as we're seeing, kind of this movement, as we're seeing, kind of the focus going right now, and we saw it before from Solana to, so everyone these different chains get kind of coordinated pushes and get for the mind share, and they get their moments. But, it's kind of really interesting to think about people that came up and really identified with, a project or, a chain, and then to have that chain kind of fall out of favor a little bit and not necessarily be, what they were excited about in the beginning. So, if people were getting into Bored Apes and that was on Ethereum, it was like, okay, well, that was kind of the no-brainer for them at that time. But then when you kind of put your stamp on that and your identity on that, and then the culture kind of shifts to a new entrant, and you see this, kind of ordification of, kind of the mind share. And you have, as you've said, hearing people be like, oh, the ETH whales are coming over and they're going to jump into this or that. it's just an interesting kind of identity shift that people potentially go through. Like you put so much, there's brands that are like, hey, we're ETH maxis, and, Bankless, for example, like we're ETH maxis. And not to say that there isn't a ton of activity there, but I'm just wondering how people may pivot their relevance in a shifting landscape of activity and focus. And it's just something that I keep kind of just buzzing about and thinking about, so you have people that identify like 6529 as a crypto punk and everything there. And it's like, are people having any sort of, kind of crisis of identity? And is there really going to be an abandonment of what people came up on? And even for myself, like part of my profile is disco beat ETH, and it's like, I don't know if I'm, and it's like, do I do something that's non-chain centric and all that? So it's just kind of an interesting point in the development of the culture. And I don't even know if that's a question. It's just something that I'm kind of newly through.
It's a great deep thought, and it's a packed question with like 61 sub questions in it. But you're right. Like, if we want to use examples, obviously Ethereum was the birthplace of NFTs, which is a terrible name, but it's where it all started, right? And even pre-crypto punks, would you have like I think it was the crypto kitties, like you had this evolution there. So the ordinals on the Bitcoin side, the mother chain was it's built totally different with UTXO model. It's totally different than this account-based model that Ethereum has. But with ordinals, Casey figured out a way for it to come over, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's garbage. Remember, all the ETH influencers are like, it's so stupid, and those tunes are quickly changing, and I think they feel irrelevance. Now, is this a temporary shift? Remember, not only did the shift go away from Ethereum to ordinals, but it also at the same time had Solana go up. And I think part of that was the ETH gas fees aren't cheap. Yep. And people like me, we've talked about this on the show, people like me who got into ETH early and like, I don't like, unless they're insanely high, if I need to mint something, I'm going to mint it. Like I might try and wait a little, but it just is what it is. But newer entrants would be like, hey, I just got $500 worth of ETH, like, and my gas fees $99 or $128. Like how does this even assist them? So Solana, where it's pennies, you're like, yeah, sign me up for that. So it even took me a while because it made me realize it tests my chain allegiance too. And and I think you would agree, I'm a fan of a multi-chain world because that multi-chains is more decentralized. Like let's say BlackRock and all the ETFs literally absorb 93% of all Bitcoin. They're holding it in their multi-sigs, whether it's through Coinbase or not. That one could argue would be dangerous. Now you could always, as citizens, could always fork it, but that takes coordination, that takes communication, and given a lot of censoring control, like who knows what could happen with that. So there's a lot of questions to ask. Will it stay with ordinals and Solana, as they both go through kind of this L2, the runes season for right. Bitcoin and ordinals, and Solana, whatever bonk and whatever theirs are called. I don't follow that as much, but I know it's happening. And I know a lot of people probably aren't making a lot of money, and they're probably the ones who are holding the bags, but a lot of people are probably making a ton of money. So is it going to come back to ETH with the Decun upgrade next week or whenever it is? Maybe. Like, I'm not selling my CryptoPunk anytime soon. I've got, what do you call these things? Math castles behind me. Like, there's so much cool on-chain stuff on ETH that, and Chaos Roads, we just talked about that, they're way up. So it's not like the ETH activity is less, but you got these other patterns. Like I heard that 6529's group, you brought him up, that their group bought a bunch of the Bitcoin Shrooms, which is a sub 1K collections. It's one of the OG collections that probably, because it's got a nice historical story telling the tale of Bitcoin and the early companies and the early things that happen, and Chainalysis, like the all Sauron's evil eye. Like there's a cool story in there, and some of them are cooler looking than others, but all of them tell this story. And the fact that those guys who are art curators, right, that's what they love the most, bought in on these. Like, I think, now, did they do that because they have a lot of ETH from all the 652 memes they're doing? Yeah, probably. They're probably hedging, but they're also probably like, wow, the focus has been over there, and it's kind of staying over there for a while. Like, hello,
Well,
you know, like I'm sure 6529, I'm sure if you analyzed his tweets, it's probably getting a little, if he's focused on ETH, it's probably getting a little less juice with the algorithms. I mean, I have to imagine, right? I mean, look at all the
yes.
monkeys, look at all the bored apes that you don't even see a mutant ape on the timeline anymore. I don't even see a mutant ape. And the bored apes, you see them, but every day you see less. Or it's like, this is me, bored ape. This is me, node monk. Like, I think node
Yeah.
monks is the gateway drug for ordinals, and then I hope they're going to learn about recursion. They're going to learn about lemon haze. They're going to learn about auto. They're going to learn about vivid. Like all
Yeah.
these great pieces of art and different collections that are, you know, the inscribed peppies. There's just so much out there. I couldn't even possibly name them all. I don't know. It's a great question, Disco.
Yeah, but I do think that there will be new value structures based on innovations. So I think that ordinals set a new framework of understanding value by it being purely on chain. And I think that Ethereum now, you will have to value on purely on chain Ethereum projects very differently than, you know, the IPFS and all that. You know, I think that that is a fundamental change that happened in terms of how people, regardless of the chain, value, you know, what's a better or something that's important in their thesis. I think that that was a fundamental upgrade, and I think that it really almost, you know, kind of Wizard of Oz behind the curtain once people started being like, but hey, dude, where is that really? And then, you know, and we were having these conversations months ago, and it really was something that kind of took over the consciousness of like, yeah, but where's that stored? And, you know, a lot of the ordinals folks that I've encountered are very, you know, that's one of the first questions they're going to make sure is like, well, dude, but it's on chain and it's on Bitcoin. So I know it's not going anywhere. And I was wary of not knowing, you know, if it was just a picture that's hosted and whatever it may be. So I think that there's just kind of a new understanding of what can be done. And I credit, you know, Casey for coming up with that whole concept. And as you say, it's just people who are getting into it right now are not even understanding that there's like 89 other chapters of the book that build on it when you're talking about, you know, the recursive and the, you know, all these different elements. And it's just
child. Yeah. It just goes on. It goes on and on and
on. One thing, what you said in there that I wanted to just pipe in on is there could be an argument that the ETH ETF not getting approved could end up being beneficial to the space overall if you are concerned about the centralization side of it. It's just,
are you
know,
saying
like
not approved ever?
Yeah.
Just as a thought exercise. Like I think it will, but I hear you. Because Gary Gensler's term ends, I think, the end of 25. And if there's a regime change, I don't know if you can just boot a guy, but I imagine if there's a regime change, I think they would can him in 2 seconds. The guy's been utterly ineffective, and now Kraken and the states are pushing back. I mean, you know, once SEC lost that last lawsuit, now people are they're sharpening their swords and they're saying, you know what, we're going to fight. So Kraken's fighting, and the big breaking news there is that 9 states attorneys all did amicus briefs to basically say, like, yes, we, in layman's terms, we support Kraken and what they're doing, and the SEC, you have grossly overreached, and we're getting involved too. So the SEC now is going to be tangled in all of these groups, and it just shows you that Gary Gensler way overstepped his reach and what he can do. Even, you know, other board members totally disagree with him, and he's like a relic in a dinosaur. I do think he was taking orders from either the executive office or higher powers that be to protect the US dollar from the Bitcoinization of the world. But, you know, he did his job because he was a Bitcoiner and he taught it at MIT. So, but it's a great call with the chains because, you know, Ethereum now at 3,800, you know, the alien punk just sold for, what was it? 16 million bucks, 4,500.
45. Yeah.
It's the second highest crypto punk sale ever. The other one was also an alien. I don't know how much higher it was, but this is the second highest ever. So it's definitely not dead. And it makes you realize like, yeah, the focus is on ordinals now. And it will be for a while. And that on-chain provenance and the ordinal theory, like numbering the inscriptions, like having an order and when you came in gives you more OG status, and the recursive and parent child and all that. Like, but this goes to show you like CryptoPunks, a lot of people in the ordinal space are predicting also the death of CryptoPunks. Like apes, Bored Apes, I see it. I mean, maybe not death, but it's going to go way down, and I could see it even going below 10 or more. But CryptoPunks, it's on chain. It really is the definition of the first in that space. It wasn't first, but it represents that first one. You know, they went fully on chain in 21, and I think CryptoPunks will completely stand the test of time. Because again, that's why all the politics and all the infighting stuff that I want no part of. Like when I buy stuff, I'm thinking 20 years from now, like what do I think will have value? Not what I think will have value because of what holders and what groups I belong to. I couldn't care less. I mean, I want to make friends along the way, but you know, you and I knowing each other since we were 6 and just sitting like the two Muppets. Yeah, I said it, Muppets in the little balcony, just like, you know, and just like, just commentating on what's going on, because I don't think there's a better way to do this than to do it for someone who's been in for a while and seen all the ups and downs and seen good friendships come and go. Some stick around in the crypto space, but also just all the collections and the, you know, and you being newer, like, should I jump in? Should I not? Like, it's a good combination to give an even keeled look at this space. Again, I always say it, but anthropologically, like this is almost a study on humans, because if you think about this space, I think Bitcoin is a store of value, but I think ordinals can be seen as fine art collecting in some cases, and it's also gambling in other cases, right? Like it runs the gamut of the type of people you have in there, and it's code, it's art, it's group dynamics at its best and worst. It's 20 somethings, teen somethings, 20 somethings, 30 somethings, 40 somethings, and I don't know where they are, but 50 somethings, right? Like,
There's a few.
There's a few of them, most of them. But,
yes, indeed.
Yeah, but it's this is the most fascinating space to be in. I'm sure AI front row would be a good one too, maybe nanotechnology, but this impacts so much of culture with, like I said, with the art and base financial freedom and separating money from the government, who, you know, I don't have a problem with the government having money, except for if you keep printing and you're not fiscally responsible, you're basically taxing us invisibly through inflation. And I think the main population doesn't understand that. They get that taxes can be awfully high, especially in European countries and, you know, in some states in America too, but so is inflation. That can be at they said 7 to 10%, but it was much higher through COVID. Come on. It was 20, 30, 40, 50%. Like our food bills have gone through the roof. It just look at your own spending and see what inflation really is. And that's when you work hard for a living and you earn some extra money and you can sock it away. Obviously, we've never even dreamed that something could be worth more energy just by holding it in the future than less. We have been taught to be a consumer culture because inflation subconsciously teaches us, we know that money is, you either have to invest it in a company you think is going to outperform inflation, or you spend it. And what is our whole economy based on? The whole Western society? Consumption and buying shit. I mean, that's what it is.
And burning through it and replacing it with the next thing. You know what I mean? So that, you know, it was like, my mom used to be in fashion, and, you know, she always told me, you know, that I should look at things, clothes, especially from a European perspective, like, dude, buy one nice sweater instead of buying, 10 crappy sweaters, and you'll have that one nice sweater for a long time and you'll always be covered. And it's just a mind frame. Ours is just what's next, what's more, what's next, what's more, and give me that endorphin of, buying it. And then we look at the zoom out to the bigger picture of just societal influencers. And you look at how, brands utilize, social media influencers to get our kids hooked on different things. And all of a sudden my kids are telling me these things are cool. And I'm like, dude, who told you this is cool? How'd that happen? So it goes back to that whole coordination of messaging. And, you look at, not to sound like, the pair up in the balcony for the Muppets, but you just look at like, how is this getting that? How is this getting that in that buzz right now? And, and you look at the different, manipulations that can happen within the platforms and TikTok, and, how that stuff can really wire kids' brains. And you're seeing that just from even Magic Eden did it to me, as I say. Like, I was looking at it, like, I need everything. Oh my God, I need everything on the front page. And then I was like, do I really, dude? And it kind of called, there we go.
This is you
and
me.
It's a funny visual. It's a funny visual on screen for the folks that are listening.
We're showing the Muppets, and now we remember their names are Stadler and Waldorf, and they would comment on the whole Muppet show. And just like, the Stadler was like the happy-go-lucky funny. It's really Ernie and Bert, right? And Waldorf was always like the grumpier guy. And together they would make jokes together, and then they would both laugh and be Muppets. So, proud to be a Muppet, and just look at this whole ecosystem in awe. And for those who play the game hard, like every day, and grind, like, just, it's a cliche, but, don't forget to touch grass, and don't forget to just connect with folks in real life, or try and make a really good friend where you're both just going to be each other's wingmen or wingwoman. And just so you could be like, hey, I'm thinking of going in on this brand new collection. It looks like I got to have it. And they're like, dude, like, do you think in a week the focus will be on there? Be like, well, yes. You're like, do you? Like, maybe not. Like, okay,
Yeah.
Simmer down, simmer.
Yeah, like, what is it about it that you really like? Well, I'm not sure, but I'm told that it's the move, and I should be in on it. So, yeah, I think that everyone's got to always understand. I'm going to go into the disclaimer section of the program. Just like, it's a wild world out there, especially in this space, and things move really quickly. So try to manage your impulses. Sometimes the best move is not to make a move. And, if that move's really the best one the next day, you can probably get back into it. So don't get over your skis, as we've said multiple times. Do your own research. Don't get caught up with emotion. Don't get caught up with toxicity. Kind of zoom back out, take some time, and you can come back in and check it. And it's going to be just as fascinating as it was when you left. And, things will simmer and things will work out. And overall, we're looking at, just a complete evolution in technology, and just kind of take the beauty of just being able to be a part of it and watch it and be positive. So that's kind of the disclaimer for this week. And I can't wait to sit down and recap what happened for the time capsule next week. Yeah. And just everybody be careful and have fun out there.
Yeah, a rising tide lifts all boats. So for those of us, we always forget to ask at the beginning, but just subscribe, hit the like button, and just tell your friends about it. Like, if you find this show interesting, just tell your friends about it. But like, also let us know what you want to hear about, what you want to talk about. Obviously, this is a very nuanced niche show. We talk about macro, then we go all the way into ordinals and NFTs, like in the trenches, and the sociology of it. And then we go right back up to the macro. So, we want to hear your feedback. We've gotten great feedback from a lot of people, but, we're just getting started, and we love doing this. And I think the more Disco and I are honest with ourselves and with each other and with the space, the more fun we have in this bull market, because, they're all cliches, but like, the GMs and the WAGMIs, like, we all were early, and we all saw this, and we were smart. And if you're not grinding too hard and not taking breaks, like, you just enjoy it, just have fun. So, here for the long haul. Smash all those buttons, subscribe so you can see it come. But great talking to y'all, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Take care.